Hey guys, I chose to record inside today instead of outside where I normally would. Today we're inside the Off-Gridopolis studios where Maristel and I produce music, some of which you'll hear on this channel in the future as we put it in the background and whatnot. And eventually we'll make some videos on that as well as share links to some of the music that we produced. But I'm inside today because it's a little bit too windy to do outside. So today I want to talk a little bit about the internet connection we've had in the past and what we're using now here off-grid in Bahia, Brazil. We're about 40 miles from the nearest tower, nearest city big enough to have a tower. When we first got here in 2010, we didn't have any internet at all here on the site where the house is. As we got a little bit more informed, we found that we were able to actually get cell phone signal here at the house, and we had 4 gigabytes of internet through a cell phone, not a smartphone, but a cell phone. And the signal was very intermittent. So, a little more investigation, we learned that we could get a rural antenna, basically an external antenna with a wire and an adapter from the regular antenna coax cable down to something that you could literally remove the back of the phone, plug it into the phone, and then you had an external antenna onto your cell phone. Again, a digital phone with a LCD display, but not a smartphone. And that provided internet. No YouTube, no surfing as we know it. We could make phone calls, and you could check your email. So that's kind of what that amounted to. 4 gigabytes per month, and that service with the cell phone was 75 reais, give or take. Later, or very quickly, that became 8 gig, I believe. There are 3 providers that we have in the area. 3 main ones, there might be more. That's Vivo, Team, and Claro. They're cell phone and internet providers. We use Vivo here because it has the strongest signal in our area. It would be nice to have options, but we don't for right now. So as time moved on, and that was, let's call it 2012, somewhere between 2011 and 2012, we learned that we could have a router. Now, one of the cities that we talked to, Miguel Camon, which is directly in front of us, had a radio, an RF transmitter that people were using for internet at the time. It wasn't the main way of doing things, but it's how they reached the rural areas, or the more rural areas at the time. This was 3G, give or take. I think they called it 3.5G as it came along. But anyway, we learned that we could have a router that you could put a cell phone chip in that would basically act like a cell phone as far as the antenna and the signal were concerned. You could plug the antenna, instead of into the phone, you could plug it into the router, and it distribute Wi-Fi through your house. So we were connected to the internet. With that, we were able to use the Wi-Fi on the laptops. We were able to use our tablet, which was our connection to the world, so to speak. This was our TV. This was, as a matter of fact, I still had it. We use this thing to death. This is a little 7-inch Nexus tablet. Still works, needs a power switch, but we don't use it so much anymore. But mobile tablet was our world as far as connections to the outside world, because we were still very limited on power, and we could charge the battery during the daytime and use it at night, where we couldn't feasibly use a laptop at the time. At that point, we had 14 gigabyte. And then Vivo kind of doubled it for us with a bonus of what they called it and gave us 28. So for a few years, actually, we had 28 megabytes per month, basically somewhere between 75 reais and 100 reais for that connectivity. Now, the speeds were pretty low. I mean, you could watch YouTube videos, but it was a little bit jittery. Streaming as we know it now, not possible. We basically had 22 to 30 kilobytes per second download. Upload, of course, is half that. So that was our internet speed for a few years. To upload something as simple as a YouTube video may take all day. Literally shut everything down as far as internet-wise. Dedicate your time, effort, and speed to uploading, something as small as 300 megabytes. Today, we use the same router. It's still 3.5G. 4G is coming into the area now. As a matter of fact, the phone that I'm using to record this has a 4G capabilities, even though I only have a 3G chip in it. So, anyway, moving forward, we now have same router, 3.5G or 3G, coming from the same town across the valley. We live on a hillside facing a 30-mile or so valley to another hillside on the other side. It's kind of a shallow valley. And that's where we get our signal, which is beautiful because there's absolutely no obstructions other than the trees in our yard. So, works fine. The speeds that we have now are upwards of 150 megabyte per second. 150 kilobytes per second download, and of course half that for upload. Price-wise, we're now at 120 reais per month, but the gigabytes we're allowed per month is up to 100 gigabytes per month, which at our energy level and usage, we would never use 100 gigabyte anyway. So with 150 kilobytes download, we're able to watch YouTube videos on a phone, which is what we use mainly now. We do watch some things on computer from time to time during the day, but usually busy during the day. We'll watch a few things in the evening on cell phone, mainly educational stuff and trying to learn the next task at hand. So with those speeds, we're able to basically use the internet any way we want, which is fantastic. I realize for a lot of you guys, those speeds are non-usable, but for us, it's very usable. I would have no problem if it didn't change, as long as resolutions and stuff, didn't get outside of my ability to see them. And that's really the only bottleneck, is when people want to start transmitting and say like 4K video. Well, that's great, but I'm watching it on a phone. I don't need 4K, and all of a sudden the file is 20 gigabytes. So it's unwatchable for me. But for now, like I said, life is great as far as the internet. Again, we're still using the same rural antenna, which has 14 dBi of gain. They have antennas upwards of 25 and different graduations in between. We could probably upgrade, get a better strength. Also, we learned that the carrier wave, or the megahertz for our particular antenna, is a little bit off of what Vivo recommends for their carrier. So that could also be better. We're at a little more than 850 megahertz, I think. I can't remember exactly what Vivo wants, but that's something to know. You need to know your carrier that you're going to use if you're going to use this type of rural antenna. And in this area, that's the best way to go for now. I've seen some videos recently where they have Starlink is coming to some of the northern hemisphere, even New Zealand, I think, in the southern hemisphere, where they're starting to dot the sky with satellites to provide basically satellite coverage to every spot on the planet with very high speeds, 75 megabyte per second speeds, which is great, I guess, if you need it. It hasn't made it here yet. I do expect to be using 4G somewhere in the next couple of years. 5G, I'm not sure. They talk about it. There's pluses and minuses, and again, we're in a pretty rural area, so it'll trickle down a few years after the bigger cities get it. But I hope this has been informative in some way, and we'll see you next time.